Good stuff. Okay, so I'm actually the money finance guy at Trigger, and my slide deck is nowhere near as colourful as Tim's. So I'll wow you first with a little bit of eye candy to kick things off, and then I'll just power through this and any questions afterwards. So. Not to be confused with Massive Inc., which is Claudia Batten's company. Massive Software, that was us then. We made software for animators in the film industry. A lot of you probably know about Massive. We revolutionised how you simulated and animated crowd scenes in motion pictures. And one of the transformational changes we were able to do for the large animation houses around the world was actually add significant value to the production lines and reduce labour time significantly. Therefore, allow directors to do more with their films on a smaller and smaller budget. So that was us then, and this is us now.
Heroes are everywhere. They're going about their lives and blending in. They're working with you, traveling with you, living with you. Every day they live a life that only they can imagine. Now you can become one too. Bring your favorite characters to life with Toon Hero. Tell your own story, joke, or create a message to share online with your friends. Available on the App Store for the iPad. Toon Hero. Become one.
So we pretty quickly realised one of the key value propositions for Massive Software in the original days was to actually make something which had traditionally been the domain of programmers, which was complex crowd scene behaviours around autonomous animation, put it actually the hands in the animators. And that was a huge transformational shift for the film industry in particular. And we sold Massive very successfully. And then over the sort of the year or two of our earn-out, a couple of us got together and we actually thought, well, we can actually start to do that now for the user. User-generated content was just starting to become an important thing. Users were demanding more and more tools that were easy for them to create their own animations and create their own content. Right at this time, Apple released a lovely device called the iPad, and they were really trying to make the iPad a productivity tool rather than just a consumption tool. So we met with a couple of execs at Apple and said, hey, this is our idea, do you think it'd fly? And they said, oh, yeah, sounds good, you know, one of 100 ideas they've heard, and yeah, if you can go and create it, off you go, and we might look at it. So we started Toon Hero, and I'll give you just a quick sort of rundown of the story behind it and really fundamentally the business model which has made it succeed. So Toon Hero is basically a platform that allows users to buy content or brands, then download those brands into their digital toy store, we call it a toy store, then create their own animations with the various modules or tool sets available on the platform, and then share those through Facebook, through Twitter, through YouTube and so on. So really quite simple, a really simple tool and a really quite simple business model. So Toon Hero, really again, as most of you know, current animation software, it's complex, it requires training, education, it's difficult, and really you can't use licensed characters, which is one of the keys. So really we wanted to focus on making this easy for users, and really without them having to buy big chunks of expensive software, so they can do it, as Tim talks about, at that Starbucks moment. So really quickly, really easy. We wanted a user to be able to download our app and create an animation all within a minute. And it had to happen then, and then they could share it with their friends. So again, and I'll unpack this a little bit later on, but one of the key things that we focused on was, well, we could create an app. It's a very competitive app store, you know, over 900,000, nearly 1 million apps, hard to get noticed. What is a way that we can really create a competitive advantage here and really focus back up the chain? We knew how important to the studios, to the brand owners, engaging with their users were. And users really engage with brands. They don't necessarily engage with products. So we knew that getting brands on early would be important to help user engagement and to continue that engagement and make them active users, and active users are paying users. So again, Toon Hero, animated social storytelling, creativity, fun, easy to share, and so on. So what was the steps we had to do? Well, as I said, so we sold Massive, Kangoo Animation, which is the other side of the team. We came together, we all had a great idea. So the structure was, we have to set up this new company. It was difficult. There were different executives and shareholders, and you know, we all contributed different parts, so we had to value our different parts and respective shareholdings to agree that. And anyway, we had the idea, we had the company, we had the culture, we had everything all settled, and we were good to go. Had the idea most importantly. But really what we did first is really try and understand the market a little bit more. We knew the App Store. By this stage there were only about 100,000 apps, but it was growing really quickly, and it was starting to get pretty clear that it was going to get crowded pretty soon. So it was going to be hard to get noticed by the time we were actually ready to go live with this. Again, the paid for app model then was changing quickly, and as you know now, it's becoming pretty redundant in a really crowded marketplace. You know, we didn't think we'd get any support from Apple. They liked the idea, but they said, off you go do it. And we knew it was really important to leverage those social and consumer networks to get those leverage network effects. That was really quite critical. So one engaged, active user would tell, you know, 100 of his friends, and so on and so on and so forth. And so that was really quite important. And the other thing is social networks have a huge appetite for user-generated content. And you've seen that on Facebook and now with Vine and other social networks. So the user-generated content is really quite critical. Again, and so looking then at the studios and brands, we wanted to partner with them. We knew that was important, but we really needed to understand the value that they would bring to us, and that most importantly we could bring to them. So again, we knew their network effect was significant. The 6 major studios had a 1 billion worldwide digital audience alone, so that was pretty significant. The really key was, how did we access those networks, and how do we partner with them around their digital assets? The studios have significant IP sitting there, and a lot of it is in their back catalogue, which is earning them any return. So we wanted to find a way to demonstrate a good return for the studios so that they could, meet those KPIs that they were after. The studios at this time were also beginning to wake up and recognise the importance of user-generated content as well. So even the big guys like Disney wanted to find ways that their user base could engage with their brands in a much more meaningful way. And in the end of the day, we were a startup, we didn't have a lot of money, we needed to find a way to reduce our marketing costs significantly, but increase our exposure. So, then it came to the deal time. Thankfully, through the networks and relationships we had already had through our Massive days, it got us in the door, often to the wrong person, unfortunately, but at least it got us into the door. But really, we needed to understand the studio's behaviour for us to be able to come up and propose a deal. And so what we realised is that they were all really around sharing risk. Not sharing risk, sharing upside but no risk. So studios didn't want any risk. They wanted all the upside and they wanted you to take on all the risk. We couldn't afford minimum guarantees or anything like that, which is the usual licensing model. But we also knew they had big back catalogues earning nothing. So we went in and we said, look, we'll take this one, this one, this one. We'll take your, Woody Woodpecker, who's not earning you anything at the moment, and we'll license him and we'll start with him and we'll show you how valuable this is. Now, the great thing with that is Woody Woodpecker actually has a phenomenal online following, more than some of the more recent brands. But the studios didn't cost them anything. Here's the assets, off you go, see if you can make some money with that. So it was a really simple model in terms of sharing revenue. So we had a basic license model and sharing revenue. The way it worked on the store was purely democratic. So again, a second tier or third tier brand or studio partner could potentially get a higher profile in the store. So the most favoured nations, and they could drive up and get the best position over Disney if Disney wasn't doing well. So that really created a competitiveness nature amongst the studio to try and push their brands through their own channels, again, which helped with the leverage network effects. And then one of the main things is, part of our tool, we developed a 24 instant visibility on sales and analytics. So before we got Apple's sort of stats on what we're doing, we would be able to report, so a Disney executive or a Warner Brothers executive could log into our sales channel, sales portal. They could look and see what assets, what brands were performing well, what brands and assets were selling. And it was instantaneous update, which was really good to help that instantaneous feedback and responsiveness from their end, so they could see if they were pushing out to their Facebook or Twitter, they could see the responsiveness really quickly. And that was quite powerful for them, and also allowed them to react as well through their own sales and media channels, which for a lot of these studios is quite a novel concept, believe it or not. So once we had all that in place and we had talked with the studios and they were all keen and interested and we'd shown some prototypes, we needed to raise the money. So we did that in 3 rounds. The first round, some seed round, some of us put in some money and we went to K1W1. Pitched Stephen Tyndall our idea and he loved it, thankfully. Loved the blue sky, loved the fact we already had a few studios who were interested. So we put in some money. That was great, got the concept. We were able to go back to the studios and the brands, show them the actual prototype, show them what it would look like, how it would work. They loved it. So we had the first 2 deals, which was National Geographic and Fox. And that enabled us to get an A round, which developed the proof of concept further and get to a product. And that then subsequently resulted in us being able to sign further deals with more studios and more brand partners. And then we've just closed a bridge round, which allowed us to get through market entry, and we're now just about to start on our 4th round in the States. The challenge here for us was, as you all know, the New Zealand VC angel market is constrained. It's difficult, it's expensive, and it's complex when you're dealing with transformational business models and new concepts and new ideas. So, if we had some biotech piece of technology or some cool farming implement, it would have been a lot easier. Unfortunately, we didn't. This was a hotly moving space. We couldn't wait months and months and months and months to convince these funders that this would work. We had a couple of months. We had, 6 weeks in one round. So it was difficult, and I'll unpack that just a little bit further on, how we got through that. And again, valuing each of those rounds was the most difficult because, again, there's a disruptive technology, new platform. You can look at compcos in the social media space and the app space, but really they're rather irrelevant because they're all quite different models. So how did we do it? So again, we looked at comparative raisings. What have some similar companies done, both in New Zealand and offshore? How much they raise? What valuation do they raise it? We sought independent advice from a range of partners in New Zealand and in the States. We did the usual profit forecasts, which everyone just throws out the window. We looked at our IP. So by this stage, we'd filed by a second round 2 patents. One was our HTML5 render engine, the plug and play aspect of that, and we are able to get that patent through. The other one was our tap swipe release on the tablet, which was quite novel, and actually when we had subsequent meetings with Apple, took them a little by surprise that they hadn't had that locked up. So we had those IP. Again, they were valuable, they were useful standalone pieces of technology, and it was helpful with the valuation of the IP. At the end of the day, it came down to some assumptions, some wild assumptions that we had to pull out of the air, and as long as we could defend them, we could show our process of getting to those assumptions about what drove the business model, what would drive sales, what would drive app downloads and engage users and so on. In the end of the day, it just came down to negotiation, as it always does, a willing buyer and seller. And again, the other important thing is we knew that we would have to go through multiple rounds to make this work. So it was quite important for us that we didn't overshoot each round. We wanted an uplift and an uptick in each round in terms of valuation. So it was really important that even though we probably could have got some of the rounds in at a higher valuation, we knew we'd be out raising again in another 12 months. So we actually want to show some good valuation increases, which was helpful. So we launched going on about 8 weeks now. Apple did come to the party. They gave us a fair bit of support. They featured us in 39 different countries. We were getting 10,000 downloads every 24 hours. I think that number's still pretty close to that now. So it's ticking on very well. We were featured in a significant number of news outlets worldwide, and again, that was largely through our channel partners and studio brands, so the likes of Fox and National Geographic and so on, who really gave us some significant PR support around the world, and so none of that was our doing at all, so it was great. We didn't have a full-time PR agency or even a PR person, so that was really great. Mashable picked us up as one of the 7 apps you don't want to miss, which was really great, and really, most importantly, the technology held up. So with those huge numbers of users, we were all quite worried, and yeah, so the initial launch of the platform was successful, and really it was just the first layer. So the platform today in a year's time is going to be vastly different from today, and we just needed to get out there, get it going, get it in the market, get users playing with it, get the studios feeling comfortable with what users were doing with it. And they have been very comfortable with what users are doing, and the active user base is going up significantly. Users sharing content is starting to increase. For the first 2 weeks, we had almost no shares, and we were absolutely terrified. We thought, that's it. We've blown it, it's not going to work, too bad. But I think what we found was that our in-app analytics showed us that users were certainly playing with it, they were engaging with it daily, and I think as their confidence built up around their own ability to animate, to use the tool set, once they had that confidence, once they had the download all their characters and so on, and they created their storylines, then they were feeling confident about sharing those storylines with others. So now those numbers are really starting to go through the roofs. So it's quite exciting, and the countries that it's coming from is even more exciting. So next steps for us. So we will continue to build and bring in more world-famous brands and studios as partners. That's quite critical. We've just signed Valve last month, and we'll be licensing first their Team Fortress characters. So that's quite an exciting one. They've got 60 million users on their Facebook page, and heavens knows how many, a lot of you up in here probably know how many hundreds of million users around the world. So that's really quite exciting, and with that we'll be engaging with their brands and characters and about their users to actually engage and tell stories with those characters outside the gameplay. So that will be quite exciting. Product placement now is starting. We're starting to get a lot of inquiries from brand owners and agencies such as Mercedes and BMW and Coke and so on, who want to place brands in our store so that people can download BMW and make little animated stories with BMW cars and so on, and share those with their friends. So that's quite an exciting. We hadn't really thought too much about the advertising or product placement side of things, but it's certainly starting to gain some traction. But at the end of the day, for us, it's just about building the product. and the value proposition, and continuing to build different modules. So we're about to launch a motion capture module where the user will be able to film someone in live motion and then attach a character or brand to that and be able to animate that way. So it's much easier for them. You can act it out and then attach the character and brand frame over that and then animate with that. We're also just about to release in November the voiceovers, so you'll be able to record in Bugs Bunny or Roadrunner voices or whatever you can in your own voice. So people who feel a little bit self-conscious about using their own voice, that'll take that away. So. And just really quickly, there's a whole lot more slides here, and I'll rush through them. But just, I guess, a quick takeaway. What we've found, really, as I said, traditional financing models are changing. So we're actually considering for a fourth round crowdsource funding in the States now. We're working with an advisor over there to actually go down that. We're hoping to raise around about 10 million US. We've got half of it committed from our existing partners, but the other half we're hoping to do crowdsourcing. And again, really the advantage of crowdsourcing is those traditional valuation models that traditional VCs and valuers use aren't working. They don't work very well. And it's hard to argue with them when you're having a rapidly changing environment with business models that are changing continuously. They can't keep up. But the people who do keep up are the users, the end users. And this is why crowdsource funding is growing so quickly. And again, as I've spoken, the business models really need to change and adapt. Consumers' perception of value is changing rapidly. What they'll pay for is changing quickly. How they engage with brands, how they engage with products is changing, and what they're willing to pay for is changing as well. And finding ways to extract value from the digital networks, like the Twitters and the Facebooks and so on, is really our challenge. And again, leveraging partners. So the big guys are falling behind big time. They know that. And they are really, really open now. I mean, this year more so than even 2 years ago when we started, in ways they can work together and ways they can leverage their own networks with a lot of smaller technology companies. And finally, customers, as always, as we know, want opportunities to engage more and actively engage with brands and companies. Cool. Any questions?
Questions for Israel?
I'd be interested to hear more about your views on how the paid-for model for apps is starting.
Well, from our perspective, we originally we tried a sort of what would you call it, an alpha release through the paid, and we just got no response. Largely, it was from the studios and the brands, so they were giving away. And they're struggling. I mean, we work with National Geographic, I'm sure Tim does. They're struggling. They're going down, we'll try pay for, and that's working to some extent, and then they're trying free stuff as well. Fox, for example, has come out, and now they're just going to give everything for free. And what they want is to try and drive people to buy their merchandise, to buy their lunch boxes, to go to see their films, and so on. So from our perspective, with the studios, with the brands, with the product placement, for them, they are very much, we don't want consumers to pay for that. We're trying to get it into their hands for free. We want as little barriers as possible, and then we want to use that to drive other behaviours from them. So in the gaming space, perhaps it's changing. I'm not familiar with that, but from the perspective of user-generated content from these brand partners, they are what we're hearing from them and what we're seeing is that they don't want anything paid for. They want it all free. They want to put it in their hands and have as little barriers as possible. So, and we're following, and we're finding that the response we're getting, the leveraged effects, networks effects, and subsequently the flow on in-app purchasing and analytics are showing that it's actually working for us from a monetization point of view. So our in-app store purchasing is way higher than what we tried with the paid-for download in terms of revenue, dollars spent, number of users, and so on.
When you're sitting in the negotiation on this rev share model, they want to obviously have no risk and all the return obviously is balanced.
Yep.
How did you value what you're doing, and how much of it was showing some traction with them and then coming back to the negotiation table?
Yeah.
Completing it off?
Yeah, a challenging one. The advantage we had was they hadn't really seen this before. So the concept of digital characters using their digital assets and allowing users to create their own content, their own stories with it was new. So that was an advantage. They weren't quite sure on that. Apple has set a precedent with the 30-70 split, so that was quite useful in talking to them about that around the revenue share. And we were able to tell them, they obviously knew what Apple does for that, which is quite significant, the payments processing, so on and so forth, platform, all of that. So for us, we were sort of likening ourselves to, well, in our in-app store, it's a similar sort of concept. You come in, we process all the payments, you just get a nice big check at the end of each month, we give you app analytics, all of that stuff, so it's pretty easy. So that really established the baseline for us, and it was easy to argue then 30% down with them. Traditional licensing with merchandising and all that, historically anyway, is anywhere from sort of the 10 to 25 to 30% upwards anyway for just a traditional licensing model. So there are already those parameters. Obviously for them there was way less risk than merchandise where there had to be a recall or something. This could be taken down instantaneously. So although we had to get through issues obviously of brand protection with someone made some crude or lewd videos and what would our takedown procedures on that were and so on and so forth. But there were already some precedents set that we were able to argue towards and convince them of. Sorry, in terms of
tweaking that,
yeah, so it's a scalable model. So it goes up as they sell more, they get a higher percentage, obviously, and that's driven obviously by a number of factors. But they have a direct influence on that. So if they want to push more users to our store and they get more downloads, they get a higher percentage. And so far it seems to be working well and they seem to be comfortable. And again, still early days yet. We'll see once they start getting their first paychecks next month.
So last question.
What kinds of channels do you go through to talk to these big companies and sort of like what's that like?
Look, I'll give you one. As I say, some of the connections we already had from previous models, but I'll give you an example. We had a bit of time left over in LA, and we were due to fly out that afternoon. It was about 10 a.m. We hadn't got to DreamWorks yet, and we hadn't been able to get into DreamWorks to see the right person. So we thought we'd just rock up to the gate and try our luck. And if you go to these big studios, there's big gates and there's security there and all that. And we turned up and said, "Hi, look, we're from Toon Hero. We're running a little bit late. Our previous meeting at Fox has ran over. Could we see the VP of Digital Assets?" And the guy looked at us and said, "Oh, look, there's no actual, you're not on the list." And look, we've sent an email. Maybe it just has got through his PA. But look, we're really sorry. Fox just held us up. We kept throwing in that term. He goes, "Oh, okay, I'll see what." Anyway, he got onto the line of the PA of the VP of Digital Assets and said, "Hey, we've got such and such here." And she clearly was hesitant, didn't want to say no. She wasn't on the calendar. Said, "Look, let them in, I'll come out and see them." So we got in, we got at the front waiting there. She came and said, "Oh, where are you from?" And we said, "Oh, look, we're from Toon Hero. We sent an email a couple months ago wanting to meet. We've just met with Fox and Warner Brothers, and you guys were the last on our list." And so suddenly that piqued her interest, and she was, "Oh, look, what's it about?" And we gave her a quick pitch, and, "Okay, look, well, he might have a couple minutes in his calendar." And we got a meeting with them, and they loved it significantly. Unfortunately, they turned around and said, "Look, we just want you guys to white label it for us." We said, "Sorry, it's not quite what we're after." But the negotiations still continue. But, just example, we just got in there and we just kept being resilient and tenacious about it. So, yeah.
Fantastic.